Wanted to fly out here and meet with you. Basically, I just wanted to come and say that I apologize.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Kody Brown has officially launched what I can only describe as his grand apology tour, and it kicks off this week. But before anyone gets too hopeful, let's be honest, if you're concerned that Kody might use this moment to reel Janelle back in, or that Janelle might still be vulnerable to his old patterns, well, you might not be wrong. They're not together, sure, but the emotional history here is complicated, and her reaction to his so-called apology says more than she realizes. Because let's break down what he actually said. Kody didn't acknowledge her pain. He didn't name what he did. He didn't take ownership of the ways he wounded her, or the damage he left behind. He simply said, "I'm sorry I was so angry."
Just being so angry and so bitter over the family breakup. Nobody deserved to have me be that angry.
No one deserved that. That's not an apology. That's a deflection wrapped in a gentle tone. It's Kody saying, "I regret the emotion," instead of, "I regret hurting you." A real apology, one with depth and responsibility, sounds like, "I recognize exactly how I hurt you. I reflected on my actions. I see how I weaponized my words. It was wrong. And here's what I'm doing to make sure it never happens again." But Kody doesn't go there. He never goes there. What we get is the bare minimum. Not even, "I'm sorry." Just an almost poetic observation about his own anger. As though his temper were some tragic force of nature he couldn't control. And yet, Janelle's reaction, that's where things get heartbreaking. She looks at him and says, quietly, "Wow, thanks." Then she starts pouring out these emotional confessions about how she didn't even recognize the man he became. She says she spent months thinking, "This isn't the guy I married. This isn't the man I built a life with." She talks about how the version of him she saw on camera, the one raging, accusing, unraveling, felt like a stranger, like someone she used to know in another lifetime. And the wild part, Kody didn't have to say anything meaningful to unlock this emotional release from her. A single shallow apology opened the floodgates. And that right there, that dynamic, is incredibly telling. Because these women, these wives, have been starved of basic decency from Kody for so long that even a small scrap of what looks like remorse feels monumental. Just him acknowledging anything brings out a reaction like, "Wow, I didn't even know who that guy was." It's painful to watch, because it shows the extent of the emotional drought they've survived in. Then Janelle opens up further, talking about how she grieved the loss of what their family was supposed to be, the dream they all built together, the one Kody abandoned first, long before anyone else stepped away. She mourns the ideal, one family, one mission, one home, raising all those children side by side. And even through all the fractures, she still clings to the one thing they succeeded at, the siblings staying bonded. But here's what strikes me. Even while Janelle says in her confessional that she doesn't recognize Kody anymore, she still accepts his half-formed apology to his face. This is a pattern with her. She speaks the truth behind the scenes, but when she's in the room with him, she minimizes, she shrinks, she goes quiet. She doesn't confront him with what she really feels, not fully. She never has, not consistently. And this isn't the first time Kody has tried this routine with her. Remember Salsa Bravo? Remember last year's meeting about Coyote Pass? He pulled the same moves then, offering just enough vulnerability to keep her hopeful, but never enough accountability to change anything. And both times, she resisted. She even said no to reconciliation. But now, something feels different. Or maybe Kody just knows exactly which door to knock on first, because if any wife is likely to respond to the bare minimum, it's Janelle. She's left him more times than anyone, and come back more times than anyone. And when her own daughter asked her, "Are you sure he's not just trying to swoop back in?" that wasn't just intuition. That was pattern recognition. And yet, watching her now, there's this deep sadness. Not judgment, because you can see how much she wanted the dream, how much she still mourns what they were supposed to be, and how desperate she is for even the smallest sign that the man she married still exists somewhere inside him. But then she says something that made me pause. She admits she doesn't recognize the life he's living now, and honestly, she doesn't recognize her own either. She talks about how the collapse of the family blindsided her, how she never thought any of this could happen, how she mourned not just the marriage but the ideal, that vision they all worked so hard for, that shared purpose they thought would last forever. And hearing her voice tremble with that old grief, it's powerful, it's raw, it's tragic, because it shows how deeply she still carries the weight of what was lost. And the eerie part, she still reacts emotionally to the same man who destroyed it. Asterisk, when Janelle starts talking about the family's ideal, I find myself wondering, what ideal is she remembering? Because if we look back over the last 15 years of footage and the years before the cameras were even rolling, this family was never operating in that dreamy, harmonious way she describes. They were fighting, negotiating, surviving, and scrambling to hold together something that kept slipping through their hands long before it officially fell apart. Yet, when she reflects on the collapse of the family, she frames it as if the breaking point was Kody abandoning the original vision. She says she was furious with him for giving up, for walking away, for turning his back on the responsibilities he claimed to cherish. And then she adds, almost wistfully, that she's just glad all the kids are still siblings. And I just stop and think, what does she mean by all the kids? Because, if we're being honest, that hasn't been true for a long time, if it was ever true at all. There are 5 children from Kody and Robyn's side who were never raised as siblings with Janelle's children. They weren't connected. They didn't grow up together. They weren't woven into the same social or emotional fabric. So when she says the kids are still siblings, she can't be talking about all of them. She must mean her kids with Christine and Mary, the children who actually lived the experience together, who shared real memories, real fights, real bonds. Yes, they're half-siblings. Yes, they share a father. But in polygamy, half-siblings can function more like distant cousins. They might live apart, barely see each other, or grow up with entirely separate routines, parents, and emotional worlds. The fact that Janelle's, Christine's, and Mary's kids still claim each other as siblings is rare. It's a testament to their strength, not Kody's idealism. And Janelle talks about this as though she's reciting a fairy tale someone sold her. Decades ago, the dream of creating a united, communal home where kids ran freely between houses and the wives worked together like a team. And part of me wonders if she was more invested in that fantasy than anyone else. She admits she believed in this utopian vision deeply, almost religiously. She bought into the promise that they would build something higher, something transcendent. But that dream never manifested, not once. What she remembers as an ideal might actually just be the story she needed to believe in order to survive a lifestyle that was emotionally depriving her. It reminds me of the porch dream that Robyn kept repeating for years. The fantasy that all the sister wives would sit together on rocking chairs, watching their grandchildren grow, basking in unity. They push this imagery on the women in their religious circles. They sell them a picturesque version of polygamy that hides the cracks, the loneliness, the competing needs, the constant emotional triage. And then Janelle says something that hits like a punch to the chest. She admits that for years, she thought more about the family than about her own marriage. She says she and Kody held on to the family ideal so tightly that the actual relationship between them was pushed to the background, and that maybe this neglect was detrimental. She says she should have focused more on them, not the family unit. That moment breaks my heart, because it sounds like she's blaming herself. She's internalizing the failure of the marriage, as though her lack of attention to the relationship is what allowed it to fall apart. But we all watched what happened. We saw Kody dismiss her needs over and over again. When she needed a home, he shrugged. When she wanted to build on Coyote Pass, he resisted. When her children needed housing, he tried to push them out. During COVID, when her kids needed compassion, he punished them. He verbally attacked them. He emotionally neglected them. He made it clear that his version of family was conditional. Kody loved the idea of the family. He loved preaching about the family, but he never lived it, not in the way that mattered. And he never wanted real one-on-one relationships with his wives. Remember when Christine begged him during counseling to build their connection? He brushed it off. He talked only about the larger family, not about the marriage right in front of him. That was his way. He hid behind the ideal to avoid giving intimacy to any one wife. And honestly, based on every former polygamist I've ever listened to, this is a survival tactic. Women learn early that they cannot depend on their husband emotionally, physically, or practically. So they redirect their focus to the collective, to the sister wives, to the children, to the community. They build their identity around the group because the marriage isn't a marriage in the traditional sense. It's rationed affection, rationed time, rationed presence. Janelle adjusted to Kody's absence because she had to. She adapted to a lifestyle where emotional neglect was normalized. And that's why even now, years later, a shallow apology from Kody sends her spiraling back into memories of the ideal. She was conditioned to hold on to the dream, even when the reality was breaking her. The only way to understand Janelle's choices is to understand the emotional survival system she lived inside for decades, protecting her heart. She convinced herself that sharing her husband was the price of admission for this big, beautiful family she'd been promised. It was easier to cling to the fantasy than to sit with the reality that she was consistently left without a partner, without affection, without priority. She's the one ex-wife who almost never wants to admit she was lonely, but you can see it between the lines. You can feel it in what she doesn't say. It's a blind spot born out of years of emotional deprivation. And let's be honest, she has been in an abusive dynamic for a very long time. People like Kody, men who need control, who rely on emotional chaos, are masters at pulling their partners back in with the smallest scrap of kindness, the faintest flicker of remorse. All it takes is a soft tone, a nostalgic look, a vague apology, and, suddenly, the cycle starts again. That's why Janelle's boundaries matter. For a couple of sweet words do not erase 20 years of patterns. If this little apology is enough for her to see him as good again, then his manipulation has already worked. And that's exactly why Kody went to her first. Then the scene cuts. New location, new tension. Producers sit down with Robyn and ask her a question that sends her spiraling. How would she react if one of the ex-wives wanted to return to the family? The way she responds is revealing. Her face contorts in incredulity. She stammers. She attempts to laugh it off, but can't mask the panic underneath. "Am I what? Really?" she says, practically choking on the words. She doesn't want to answer, period. Her discomfort is instant, physical, and extreme. And honestly, it makes total sense. If there's anyone Kody can still emotionally maneuver, it's Janelle. Sure, he manipulated Mary for years, but that door is bolted shut now. She's not coming back through it. She wouldn't take him back if he crawled on his knees. But Janelle has always been the one who gave him something to work with, the easiest to pacify, the most forgiving, the most willing to believe in the good version of him that only appears in flashes. That's why he chose her as the first stop on his apology tour. He knew she would react warmly, and the show milks it, cutting between Janelle and Kody, giving each other soft, lingering looks that are meant to hint at reconciliation. But let's be serious, that is pure editing magic. Janelle is literally building a house across the country in North Carolina. This isn't a rekindled romance, it's a storyline. But the editors know exactly what they're doing, playing on the wives' emotional history while cutting immediately to Robyn's reaction. And Robyn is not happy. She laughs nervously, she shakes her head, a flash of irritation crosses her face, which she then tries to reel back in. She clearly does not want anyone returning to the family dynamic she controls. Why would she? What benefit is there for her? More emotional competition. More voices calling out Kody's behavior. More women refusing to play the role she plays. The only upside for her and Kody would be more income coming into the collective pot. Beyond that, a returning wife offers her nothing. And then we get to the most telling moment. Her facade slips. She gets flustered. She fidgets with her mouth, nose, and hair, those classic tells she always has when she's hiding something. Her voice quivers as she tells producers she can't even talk about this scenario, because she'll fall apart if she goes any further. She threatens to leave the set. She says, "Hope is a dangerous thing." Think about that. Hope dangerous. That's not the language of someone open to reconciliation. That's someone who spirals the moment she imagines anything outside of the controlled universe she's built with Kody. And if McKelty's recent comments are right, this all makes sense. She said Robyn and Kody live in a fear-based world, one where everything's a threat, where the sky might as well be green and the grass purple, because that's how upside down their emotional reality is. Of course, hope becomes terrifying when you live in that kind of chaos. Hope means risk. Hope means change. Hope means losing control. But if Robyn truly wanted these relationships healed, if she genuinely wanted the wives reunited, she's had endless chances to show it. When she saw Janelle on Coyote Pass, she didn't even walk over to say hello. When Janelle moved out, not a meaningful conversation. When the marriages fell apart, no attempt to bridge the gap. Nothing. So this sudden heartbreak at the idea of Janelle coming back, it doesn't track. Her actions say it all. She doesn't want anyone returning. She wants her version of the family. Her curated one, the one in which she is central. Hope isn't dangerous to her. Competition is.